This video is a part of a series, and if you want to check out the whole series, head on over to my new website, blenderfrenzy.com, where you can access lots of free and members-only content, including extra tutorials, downloads, assets, blend files, Q&A live streams, and much more. Signing up helps support me, which in turn gives you more Blender content, so head on over to blenderfrenzy.com and become a member today. Welcome to Blender Frenzy. I am Justin, and look what we have today. Ta-da! So if you have been following me for a while, you know I made a course a couple years ago called Easy Borders. It's not being sold right now because it's very outdated for, I think it was Blender 2.83 that I was using. But it had this concept of, it was driver based, and basically you could drag around corners to resize the border and then put the text in there. And then you would use the sliders to, animate that border. Well, with the introduction of geometry nodes, I thought, you know what, this is going to make easy borders much easier, and it does. And so I'm going to show you what I have. So this, before I show you all the nodes set up, I want to show you here we've got our animation. Basically here we got the text sliding in, and then you have the border going around the word. Now, this word can be changed to anything. And here's the geometry nodes. I'll pull this up here. The modifier here. And we can change a whole bunch of things. We can change the thickness of this. Now, if you go outside, it kind of breaks it. But if you go inside, you can make it as thick as you want. And we can change the thickness here too on different angles, which this actually gives it a little bit of a stylized look, kind of an uncontrolled stylized look, but it could work. We make this really thin, something like that. So just different effects kind of like automatically, kind of by accident there. Can change the size on the X and the Y to go different directions, but the size is actually based on the word itself. So I'm going to jump down. I'm going to skip this. We'll come back to this. The first text right here, you have geometry. You can change this to anything, and then it will resize it. Let's just do something really small like A. There we go. And it automatically resizes it, and it affects the animation. And then basically the size up here is just the margins, basically the top and the bottom margins, how far away from the text it is. But if I put any text in here, Justin, it will stay that distance away from it, with those margins. Oops, there we go. And so that's what's kind of happening with all of these words here. So I can change these words. Here's text 2. Justin is too wordy. Which is very true. And then it will just automatically go around that. And you have the same animation, and all you have to do is just punch in the text here, whatever text you want. And so the idea is to make a whole bunch of, maybe like 20 different texts. I only have 4 right now, but make a whole bunch of different texts. And then if you're doing a documentary or something, then you have basically your motion graphic will fit like the names. Like if you have different people coming on and you want to show the name for each person that's coming on, well, there you go. You have their name, and you don't have to adjust the animation every single time for every different thing. It just saves you a lot of time. Like, oh, I like this borders template, so you just use this template and you plug in all the names of your people, or maybe you have different chapters in a course that you're making. Then you can put all the names of the different chapters and then just stick it somewhere on the lower third corner of the screen. So that's kind of the idea. So we also have the color of the line, the text, and the background. If we come over here, we can change those here. Now, the line, color, I'm just going to go and adjust the hue. You can see the different colors. You can make that any color. And same thing with the text. Just come in here, adjust the hue for the text, and that's not working actually. So we'll have to fix that for some reason. That I don't know why that's not working. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, I know why it's not working. Duh. Because you can't change the hue of white. It's because the hue is going around the circle, but if it's smack dab in the middle of the circle, it's not going to go anywhere. So we have to actually bump up the saturation just a little bit, and then we can affect this. What goes good with green? I'm not really good with colors. Like I know, like, okay, you have the opposite on the opposite color wheel, so I know opposites kind of make for good contrast there. So bring that saturation up a little bit. I don't know, something like that. And then of course the background. Now, okay, I have two backgrounds, so I actually made a separate background just now, and that's because if I actually hide this background, we can come to the modifiers of our borders here. I just have a little switch here, so turn the background on, turn the background off, and then you can tell which material for the background. And then we can come over here and change the color of the background. But the reason I didn't like this is because with this animation, the background also moves. So I just have this animation kind of repeating like this. And then you can see the background kind of sliding in there with the rest of everything. But if you wanted the background to stay, I just created a separate plane as the background. So let's go ahead and turn that off here. So this one turn off, and we'll turn on the separate plane that's just staying there. It has the same material, so they should be the same color. But if I bring that value up, and then we can change the hue on that one too. Wordy. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really all that great with colors. I don't know. This looks really ugly. So I had it the way I had it for a reason. Can I actually undo? Ah, yes, the red there. Is that white? Oh, my eyes are bugging with me now because of all the color changes. I think that is white now. My eyes need to get used to it. Okay, and then we have the so all of these are animated here. Now, I'm not going to go over the animation in this tutorial. I will make another tutorial for the Plus and Pro members on Blender Frenzy. By the way, blenderfrenzy.com, you will have access to this. I'll put this in the freebies. The freebies will get this template as a download that they can download. The geometry nodes. So that's what we're going to go over today in this. So here's all the geometry nodes. This will be available for free download for the freebies, Frenzy freebies on blenderfrenzy.com. Head on over there. So I will make another video for the Plus version. That's $5 a month for anybody who wants to do the Plus on blenderfrenzy.com. You get members only tutorials, and that will show you how to make this animation to where you can not only make the geometry nodes, but you animate it in a loop to where you can loop it as many times as you want. If you want the full template where you don't want to do any of the work, you just want to download the blend file because you like the template and you want to use it for a video project, where you can just come in here, you don't have to do any of the work, just type in your words that you want to use and then it will just punch it out. Saves you a whole bunch of time. That's going to be for the Frenzy Pro members. So head on over to blenderfrenzy.com today, but let's get started with the actual node setup here. I'm just going to maximize this here so you can see it. If you want to take a screenshot of this here, you can go ahead. Now, you might not be able to see much because you can't really see the text, but I'll zoom in here. We'll go through it all. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in, and so we got our group input here. This is where you input all of the stuff over here on the side. But let's see what is happening here. Frame 25. Okay, and I'm going to pin this here and bring this up a little bit. Okay, so we have our switches. So all of the text that we have coming in from our inputs over here come in here to our switches. So we've got the text being true coming in, and then we have the switch itself. And the switch itself is just a 0 or 1. 0 is false and a 1 is true. So if we enable all of those on the same frame, you can see we have them all together because they're all coming into this join strings. And then, of course, we got strings to curve and then fill curve. If we mute this, you can see nothing here because they're not selected. But if we come into enable our overlays over here, you can see the outline to all of the letters. And so we need to actually fill that curve in order to see them. This next here, the realize instances, basically is helping this bounding box. And this is how we get the size of our string or our words. And that's what we use to calculate the size of the border that goes around it. So I have the X and the Y switch places here, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But that's just because I rotated the border around 90 degrees from the original starting point so that it starts up here in the top left corner. And then we add this to the scale. Actually, we're adding a size. So this is the size of the I think that's this one here. Let me just uncheck that. Yeah. So this is the size here, the X and the Y. It's just adding it on top of the original, and then that's plugging into our scale, the scale of the actual border. So this is the text on the bottom here that we just went over, plugging right into the border that goes around it. So let's go back up here. We have just a mesh to curve, and that's just geometry. And a mesh to curve is a square, a plane. This border here was a plane as a starting point. And so I turned that plane into a curve to where it's just the outline of the plane, which is the curve. And then we resampled the curve to make it bend better at the corners, to make them sharper. Because if I bring this count down, actually, let's just go to 10. You can see it starts to break it. But if I start to crank this up, you can see at the end, all right, we're gonna turn all of these off again so that we only have one word here. And we're gonna put Blender back in here because I don't want to see my name. All right, so we've got, you can see the corners there here, so you have to crank this up in order to make that a lot more smooth, or in this case, sharp. And then this cyclic thing here, it makes sure it's not cyclic. So if this is cyclic, if we actually just mute this, we can't actually have this start and end do anything. It's not going to go anywhere. So if we add this cyclic, it breaks that cycle so that we can actually animate the line going around it. Now we can actually animate this, also make this cyclic or not. We can switch that on or off. And then this, it goes into a trim curve, which that's what this is. So the start and end is just the trim of that. So if I take that off, you can see, there we go. So here's the end and here's the start. And so we can adjust one of them or both of them at the same time to make really cool different effects there. Okay, and then that goes into a transform node, which is what we rotated this 90 degrees so that we can have our start over here. And then the curve line, so curve to mesh, basically took our plane, turned it into a curve so that we can get the edge information. And then we are taking that information, putting it back into a mesh, turning it into a mesh with another curve, a curve line, which we just, that's the thickness here. So the curve line is, if you imagine the line starting from the top going inwards. Bring this in like this. Okay, so here's our line, basically. The curve line, if we get rid of that too, you can see it's 0.1 on the X. Now remember, this looks like it's on the Y axis, but again, we've rotated this 90 degrees. So this is on the X. This shows how long our line is going to be. And so basically we take this line, however long it is, and then we repeat it a whole bunch of different times along the plane curve edge that we made, making it look like a border and giving it its thickness. So all we have to do is adjust this curve line length to adjust the thickness. And then it goes into the material, which we've set that material here to the line. And then it joins our geometry with, we set the material for the text here. So all of the text has a set material going in here. And then this is geometry for the background. So when I added the background, I just added a grid, added a transform to resize it, and then we plugged all of this in to be able to switch this on and off. But again, that is attached to the animation, so it's going to be sliding back and forth. So that's why I have that off now. But we still have it as an option if we want it, and it joins into our geometry to create our final product, which is this here. Oh, that's not plugged in anymore. So we've unplugged a lot of this stuff here. But let's our thickness and then our start and end, just like that. Okay, so that's kind of what all of this mess is. Let's try to build this from scratch. All right, so we have a new Blender instance opened up. I'm going to pop on over to geometry nodes. Now, screencast keys don't work with geometry nodes in 3.2.2, so you won't see those, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot because we're just going to be adding nodes and connecting them. So adjust our camera here. Let's get rid of the default cube. Let's add in a mesh plane. And then I'm going to press 7 and go into top mode. I'm going to make sure my view aligns center view to cursor because the cursor is in the world origin. And then I'm going to Control Alt 0 to place my camera right there so everything is centered. And then with the plane selected, I'm going to click New, and then we'll go ahead and pin this as well. Okay, so now we have a new modifier on our plane. Let's pull this out here of geometry nodes. And this is where all of our information is going to end up. So I'm going to Shift A to add in, and then I'm going to search, and I'm just going to say mesh to curve. There we go, click that, boom, and then it makes our plane a curve. So you see the line here, and it's not filled in. If I wanted to do fill curve, I could also add that in here, fill curve, and then it will look just like a mesh plane, but it's not a mesh anymore. It's actually a curve that's filled in. But I don't want to do this, so I'm going to Control X to delete that, but keep this connected. And then I'm going to add in, if I press S, I can search, type trim curve, and we'll put that here. And this is where our start and our end is going to be, so that we can adjust the start points and the end points of our curve. But we can't because it is currently cyclic. There's no breaks at all. Everything is connected to each other, so we need to add in a set spline cyclic right in between these two. Since this is unchecked by default, we don't have to do anything else. And now you can see our start and our end. So here we go, start and end. And the start is over here because if we drag this start, you can see that's where it starts, and then this is where it ends. So basically it's going this way and flowing like this, and it ends here. Now this is a big gap here, and that's because we only have 4 points basically. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not cyclic, so it breaks this right here. But if we move these over and we put in here a resample curve, now we can bump up the count of amount of points we have. So I'm just going to crank this up. Just continue to crank it up until you can see it is, if we zoom in here, you can see we just want to make that a sharp edge as much as possible. Now I just do 5,000 because then you can see it makes it as sharp as possible. And now we have more of a full square to work with. So our end point starts at our beginning point this time, and it goes all the way around. If you like it like this, you can keep it like this. I like to start at the top left over here because that just makes more sense to me. So what I did was add in a transform node, just plug that right in there. And then we can take the z-axis and we can just rotate this. And I'm just going to type in -90. And then now when we move our start point, you can see it starts right there. And our end point is like this. So it starts there and goes all the way around just like that. Cool. Let's move on. Now we need to add the line that goes all the way around it. But in order to do this, we need to turn this back into a mesh, basically. So we're going to search for a curve to mesh. Well, we had the mesh to curve right here. So we turned our plane into a curve, and this is a curve, 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 and now we're turning it back into a mesh, and it will give us this option of a profile curve. And what that will do is we'll use another line, another curve, to use as the line like you saw before. So we're going to add in curve line, and we're going to use that as our profile curve. And it breaks it, of course, but that's because we need to mess with the size here. It looks like we actually need there's a 1 on the z-axis by default at the end. I'm just going to make that 0. And then I think it's the x that we need to, pull up. So then this is going to be the line. And remember, like I said, if we just bring this down, just to go over this again, actually, if we just plug this right in here, can we see anything? Oh yeah, here we go. So here's our line, and then this is on the X, you can see, and we can move the direction here on the Y of the start and the end to make diagonal, kind of see what's happening there. So on the X, we can see, we can determine how long or how short it is. And so that's what's happening there. But if we use that as the profile curve, it's going to use it as the line that goes all the way across our border. And so however long it is however thick it is. So we bring it like this, and then we can pull that in. You can see that then affects our thickness. Now you can see this Z fighting here, and that's just going to happen because of how many, we have 5,000 points on this, and that's not very efficient, but it is the easiest way to use geometry nodes to get it to go around that corner there. If there's another way, please feel free to let me know. But we do have 5,000 points here, so everything that as we go along here, once it starts to turn and curve, it's curving and it's like, and so you can see all of those, all of these lines. See, there's just infinite lines as it turns, and they're all on the same plane, so that it's called Z fighting, because Blender doesn't know which one to show because everything is sort of overlapping, but it's not overlapping really because they're actually inhabiting the same plane, which is not possible in the physical world. So that's what's happening there. But when we have this in our material shaded mode, and if we have a material on it, it's actually going to hide all of that, so we don't have to worry about it. Which brings us to the material. First, let's make sure we're in material shaded mode, and we want to come to our render properties, scroll all the way down to color management, change this to standard, and that just gives you the standard RGB colors. And then over here, we're going to add in a set material, and then we will place the material here. Now we don't have any materials created, so let's go to our materials tab and click new, and then we're going to title this line, and I'm going to change Principal BSDF to emission. And now we can change our color of our line here, but of course we need to make sure that this is using our line material. There we go. And now we have that color. And now when we do the end and it turns that corner, we don't see any of that Z fighting, which is what we want. Now this is too dark. I'm going to bring the saturation down just a tad, something like that. Yeah, just easier on the eyes, like that. All right, so there we go. Now we have our start and our end points of our border. Just like that. And our thickness and and our scale. So the scale here, you can see this is the scale on the Y. So the X is the Y and the Y is the X, again because we have this -90, we've rotated it. So yeah, so just like that. And we're going to actually be using something else, the text, to control this scale. So let's, I think we're done with the border now. So let's go ahead and we'll make this 1 again. And let's go ahead and add in some text. So let's move this down here, just give us some more room. So we're just going to start with a string to curves. And then we just put our string right here. Now we can make another string and then plug it in here, and then that's what we'll do later. But for now, we'll just type in Blender. Okay, if I can spell Blender here. And if we plug this in, if I do Alt-Shift and click, you might have to have the Node Wrangler add-on for this. I'm not entirely sure. But then here's our text. And then, of course, like we had before, we need a fill curve because this is just a curve, so we can see it better. Now, right here, it is, if we scroll in here, it is left aligned, a line to the left. So here's our origin point. And then our origin point is at the very left bottom of our text. That's the origin point. So if I ever wanted to rotate that, it would rotate around that origin point. But I'm going to change that to center. And now the text is going to be centered into that origin point. So if I do Blender is awesome, then again, it's just acting like a center. Basically, this origin point will always be in the center of that text, however long it is. So we're going to bring this just back down to Blender. And now we need some information to be able to tell Blender that we want to use the length of this text to affect the scale of our border. And this took me forever to figure out. This is the crux of it, basically, the crux of everything that we're trying to create, so that it automatically does it. So we don't have to adjust the text and then go back and adjust the border manually. So yeah, let's add in. What we need to search for is a bounding box. So we place that right here. And what this does by default is it gives every letter its own bounding box. So this is close, but it's not going to actually have the information we want. And here's a tip that you can do, which I just found out this also. If you hover your mouse over here on the min and the max, right now it's 0, 0, 0, and it says it's a vector. So now you can do this with other things, but some things, this socket value has not been computed yet. So a lot of things it doesn't work with, and I'm not entirely sure what is calculated right away and what isn't. I'm guessing maybe this isn't. Oh no, yeah, geometry interest is 7. Oh no, this is calculated. Okay, is this calculated? Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, again, I don't know. But you can do this. You can hover over one of these points. We have a 0, 0, 0. Now if I plug this in, our maximum we're going to be using, so if I plug that into the scale, you can see that if we plug this back in with Alt, Shift, and click, it's nothing, because our scale is now 0, 0, 0. So that doesn't help us. So what we need to do is we need to get the bounding box of the entire string, not just each letter. It's so easy, but it takes so long to scour the internet to find the answer. Again, the way I'm using it, not a lot of people use it. So, but I did end up finding in the crevices of the internet, I found a solution, just happened to run across it, and that is with a realize instances. Apparently, if I put this right before the bounding box, boom, now it's the whole string. And again, I can type in anything over here. Blender is anything over here, and then it's going to have the whole thing. So just going to undo that. And we have our Blender and we have our bounding box. So now if I hover over the maximum, you can see the vector is 1.5, 0.6, and 0. So that will translate if I plug that in here. Let's bring this up here, plug that in here, and now let's see what the size of this is. Ta-da! Now you can see it does affect the size, but it affects the size wrong, because again, we've rotated everything. But just to demonstrate again, we can just is awesome here, and it will affect the size. Now, it's thinking that it's the X, but we've turned the X 90, so now it looks like it's the Y. So we have to switch this. And the way to do that is we take a separate X, Y, Z. So we put this vector for 0.6 and 0, and that's going to translate your X, Y, and Z. And then we're going to combine them again. Combine X, Y, Z, but we're going to switch. So the X actually needs to be the Y, and vice versa. And so now it's going to match exactly what we have here. So if I just say hi, it's going to match this. Now let's go ahead and add these together with a join geometry node. So join geometry, and we're going to join the line and the text together. Let's see, we want our text before our realize instances, because this is our bounding box. Remember, we don't want to see that. We want to actually take the fill curve, this here, and we want to plug that in to combine it with our geometry, and there we have something that looks like this. Okay, so you can see that it fits snugly within our bounding box. And in fact, if we just mute our curve line here, mute that, see, you can see it. I'm not entirely sure how it's actually calculating the Y value here, but we can change this anyway, because we need to, we need to be able to adjust our margins anyway. So we can do that with a vector math. So I'm just going to go to vector math here, plug that in, and we want it to be add. So we want to take whatever the size it is now, which is going to match our string. So blender here, so you see it matches the string. Now it doesn't match it perfectly, I found out. It matches it on the very right and the top, but it doesn't match it on the left and the bottom, which I don't exactly know how to fix, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot anyway because it still works for what we need it to. So if we come over here to our vector, now we can add, so this is going to be our x, which is now our y. There we go. We can adjust our margins there. Oh, I know why. For our text, we've only centered it horizontally, but we haven't centered it vertically yet. So let's go back to our string to curves over here, and right here, top baseline, we want to change this to middle. There we go. So now that's going to be easier. If we mute our add, you can see it still is touching up here and over here, but not on the bottom. So again, there's still a bit of a gap on the left and the bottom, but it still, again, works for what we need it to. So if we add now, we can add our margins on the top and on the sides. And then we can add in our curve line again by unmuting that with M. And now we have our border. Let's adjust the thickness of our border here. That's this thing here. It's our curve line length. So let's just make this a little less. And then we can adjust our vector here, bring that in. Awesome. So now, again, whatever we put in here, and now we can still adjust the start and the end because we have a factor of a start and end that goes from 0 to 1. And so if I do this 0.5, here you go, this is halfway. Well, it's going to be halfway no matter what we have in here. Hi, Justin, blenderfrenzy.com. Head on over to blenderfrenzy.com. You download this blend file for free with the Blender Frenzy freebies. Freebies, yay! Okay, so that is basically it. That's how you add a border around text and have it automatically be resized. But let's make this even easier. So we're going to put in our output so we can just access it through the modifier here. So that's just with this group input here. Basically, we're going to start plugging things into the group input. So the first thing that I want to do is adjust the thickness of the line here. And you know what, we can disable our overlays now so we can see this better without that outline. It looks really good, I think. So what we need to do is we need to plug in that thickness right here, this little node here. So let's go to that thickness. This is our curve line, which is our curve line length. So I'm just going to take that and plug that right in, or I can just click and drag from here and plug that like that. So now we have a new end point here for this, but we can rename this because end doesn't really mean anything to us. So let's hover our mouse over here, press N, go to our group input, make sure that's checked, and then we can do group, group, here we go. And so we're going to change end to thickness. So now we know we can move this to make that thicker or thinner. Again, if you go opposite, it sort of breaks our illusion here. So if you need it to go out like this, basically you would just go in and then you would adjust the size of this. So you would take these two and then you would just pull that out. Now the size is next, actually. So we're going to take this vector. Let's just pull this one. We'll pull this one over here into the vector. Now we rename this to size, line size, line size, and now we can change that. So this is up, this is over to change our margins. Actually, you know what? This isn't line size. That's the thickness. Maybe actually we can change this to line size. That's easier. And then this will be border margins. border margins. There we go. That makes more sense. So let's bring our line size down a little bit. That looks good like that. And now we can do our color. Oh, you know what? I forgot to add the color to our text here. So we need another set material. I'm just going to duplicate this here, put that here. And it's using the line, but we're going to make a new material. Let's go and just add this plus. We want to stay on our plane, which let's change the name of our plane to borders, or it's just one border. So border, and then line here, and we just plus, and then new, and then same thing, emission, and then this is going to be white. So then we're going to oh yeah, we're going to double click this, title this text, and then we can choose text from here. All right. If I press and hold shift and then right click and drag, I can make a new point. And then if I press G, I can move this around. And this is just going to help. I'm going to do that over here too. Well, maybe I'll just pull this down like this. Yeah, that's just going to help visualize our scene a little bit better because all of these nodes are crossing over each other. Okay, so then we've got our text down here, one color, and then our line, which is another color that we can change at any time. So let's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this group input node, Shift D to duplicate that and pull this over here. And then we're going to plug that in here. So this is our line and our text. The top one I think is the line. So we'll say line color, and then we'll say text color. Sometimes I like to put the color first, so color, line, color, text, just to see what it is, but we'll keep it like this for now. And let's go back to our modifiers, and now we have our line color and our line text. Now I'm not going to add the background to the actual border. We'll just keep that separate. So we'll move on now. So what else we need is the text switches. Right, but before that actually we need the start and the end. So just bring this back over here, plug that into the start, and plug this into the end. Now we have the start and end of our border that we can animate here. And now we can put in our text here, our switcheroo things here. So if I add in a switch, this is really powerful, and you can do switches with geometry, materials, textures, images, objects, a whole bunch of different things. Of course, we're going to do a string here, and then if the switch is turned on, meaning it's true, then it will have this string. So, but we don't want to fill anything in here because we're just going to plug this in here. So we'll just plug that in. And then we're going to, let's rename this. So we got line start and then line end. And then this one will be text 1. Okay, and then I'm going to right beneath that plug in the switch. So here's your text 1, and then this is off and on. So this is true and this is false. So if I then plug this into our string here, so the output of the string into here, you can see we don't have anything in here, but if I put something in here now, you can see it's false, but it's true if I click this over to 1, and ta-da, you can see, here we go. Now, if I wanted to do this with multiple texts, I would just duplicate this and then plug in the same thing. So we plug in the text first and then plug in the switch after that. So the switch is on the bottom. It's up to you the order that you want these on, of course. And then we just add in a join strings. And then it's the same thing, but we plug this in here and this in here, and then we can join two things here. Become a member at, and then bing, become a member at. Oh, okay, but they're opposite, so of course I can just switch these around. Become a member at blenderfrenzy.com. Ta-da! Switch those around, or I can just instead, what would be smarter is let's pull those back. We're just gonna copy this and paste that here, and then just say blenderfrenzy.com. blenderfrenzy.com down here. That would make more sense. And then of course you can toggle these on and off, switch these on and off, and we can animate that property. So it can start off and then it can start on. And then if you just build a whole bunch of these, we can just keep duplicating these like this, just a whole bunch of them. And then we could just plug all of those in. And then we would, of course, plug all of these in just the same way we did this. And then we'd have text 1, text 2, text 3. Oh, and we didn't change this to text 2. There we go. Text 1, text 2, text 3. And then you could use as many or as few of them as you wanted to. And then this would be your template that you could have and you could, you know, give away or sell or whatever. And if someone likes that template, they're like, oh yeah, that's great. And then all they'd have to do is come over here and plug in their own content, their own words, and it would look exactly like the template. And then of course they could tweak the appearance of it a little bit with the thickness and the margins, and they could even animate the margins opening and closing. Or we also have the colors that we could change and or animate as well. And speaking of animation, I will continue this tutorial. For the Plus and Pro members, there'll be another video taking this, starting right where we started here, and then doing the actual animation, showing you how to make the animated template so that if you do decide to give it away or sell it for somebody else, that they would only have to plug in their words, click render, and be done. But again, that is for the Plus and Pro members at blenderfrenzy.com. They will also have access to the final template, including the animation on the Pro version. You can get the Pro downloads for that. So head on over to blenderfrenzy.com and become a member today. And until then, you will see me in the next one.